Hello and welcome to another iRacing video where today we're going to continue our journey to getting 4K iRating. Currently at the moment I am sat at 3,847 iRating, so we haven't got too far to go. Hopefully this race we can get a decent haul in and get ourselves closer to that 4K mark. We're just waiting for these paints to load in whilst we're sat here on the grid ready for this race. But we're racing at the Nurburgring, the GP circuit, the slower of the two chicanes here at this track, and we are driving the HPD, as you can see. Now unfortunately for this round I've gone and put myself on the back foot straight from the off, as I ran into some technical issues whilst loading into the qualifying session, which meant that I ended up missing the entirety of the qualifying session. But I managed to get here just in time for the actual grid and the actual race itself. But it means we're going to be starting in 7th position on the grid, so we've got a couple of people behind us, which is kind of nice, but at the same time I'm a lot further down the grid than I would have liked to have been. But I guess it makes it a little bit more interesting, as I've got to try and go a little bit more aggressive to try and pass these guys as quickly as possible in order to get myself and keep myself relatively close to the faster runners at the head of the field. So we're underway, rolling in this mini formation lap here, just from the back straight. We've got the TrackIR 5 on the go, as we usually do, which allow me to look around the cockpit of the car, take glances to the wing mirrors, although I find them near enough useless here in iRacing because they are zoomed in. But there's the green flag already, and we are underway racing. Unfortunately, the guy in the black, pink and white car that's to my right is a little bit slow off the line, so a little bit held up there, but we are right underneath the rear wing of P6 as we come down to approach turn 1 for the very first time in this race. Want to see if we can try and gain a position here, so we're going to look to the inside, get relatively early on the brakes, play a little bit safe, but there is the room on the inside there, so I'm going to try and take that and see if we can nab a position here as early as possible. Going to be on the outside though, coming through turn 2, very, very close to making contact in the rear view mirror, and then the guy goes and out brakes himself, goes straight into the rear of my car, which shunts me forward and shunts me deep into turn 3. But we managed to kind of gather the car back up and get down the inside through turn 4. We've got a guy now attacking us, but they make contact behind. He's spinning off in the rear view mirror, as you can see, and then as the guy was spinning through the grass and back on towards the circuit, they ended up collecting each other once again. So that's given me a whole lot of breathing room to play with behind, which is good. But what's not so good is now the potential damage that I have to the rear of the car after that hit. It was quite a substantial one of that. I got a 4x safety rating penalty for it. Not entirely sure if it was my fault. I was kind of being relatively cautious, it being lap 1. Obviously the guy in front braking and slowing down for the corner, and I was doing the same. But I think there was an element of him missing his marks and running deep. But yeah, that was a pretty big hit to the rear of my car, so I've probably got some damage to the rear. At the moment it doesn't feel like it's affecting me through the corners, which is very good, as we're getting very close there to the back of the guy in front coming into the braking zone for that slower chicane. Just about managing to keep it out the rear of his HPD. It would have been very much a double whammy if I had gone into the back of him, as yeah, the car's feeling pretty good on the rear in terms of like downforce. It doesn't seem to affect me through the corners, but it could potentially hurt me on the straights. There may be some drag, which I certainly don't want to be having to deal with, as obviously that's going to slow us down on the straights. It's going to make overtaking here a little bit more difficult than it needs to be, and we are all over the back of P5 at the moment. Obviously wanting to try and pick up that position as soon as we can and see if we can try and keep pace with the guys out in the lead, as being stuck behind them when they're taking lines like this, which are far from ideal. You can see my line was so much better than his, just going through turn 7 there, and then likewise here coming into the hairpin. You can see I'm just gaining quite a bit more in the entry, able to carry a little bit more speed and confidence going into the corner. It's going to be costing me time to the race leaders, so we need to get a good run coming through these two turns and see if we can try and potentially make a move coming into the chicane. That's going to be our next best overtaking opportunity. So coming off this corner is going to be critical. Not the best run for it personally for myself, but slightly better run than he has. But you can see he's starting to pull away from me now a little bit here. So this must be because of the damage that I have to the back of my car. He's gone a little bit deep there into the chicane, so we'll try and get the switch back on him coming off of the turn. He'll be here on his inside coming into the final corner. So I'm going to hang it in tight, just drop it down into first gear, try and get the drive coming off the turn. You can see we've managed to nose up ahead, but as we're coming down this start-finish straight, he's got so much more straight line speed than I have, so that's pretty much confirming that I do have quite a bit of damage to the rear of my car, and it is slowing me down through drag, but having a bit of a look down the inside there, a little bit of a lunge. He's going to try and come back at me coming into turn 2, but then thinks better of it as I kind of sweep into the corner. I was going to give him the racing room, but as he backed out, then allowed me to come back in towards the apex. So we're now up into P5. P4 is immediately here in front of us, which is good. Dispatch one driver immediately onto the next one. And once again, I want to be getting past this guy as soon as I possibly can. So as you can see, my lines are better than his, and we're gaining time on him. He's a little bit deep here coming into turn 1. It's almost as if he didn't want to turn in, was going to let me go through on the inside, but I was anticipating him actually taking the racing line there. Ran a little bit deep myself and kind of semi-trying to avoid him. So that was a bit of a unusual situation, and once again he's early on the brakes here coming into 11. Now we're coming into 12, and once again he's very early on the brakes, and yeah, almost going into the back of him. Ended up losing the rear end of the car slightly and bouncing across the inside. I've now got a guy coming at me here, but placed my car beautifully coming into that right-hander to stop him from slipping on past, and now those two drivers who are there immediately behind are kind of battling away for position. I didn't want to let him on through because it's just going to make it more difficult to try and get back past once again. So stopped my elbows out a little bit and held on to the 5th position from now. We have dropped off the back of P4, and obviously the guys up ahead as well. So hopefully we can close him back up in the corners here, as he goes makes a slight mistake there coming off of turn 1. Rear end of the car trying to step out on him. So come through turn 3, trying to hang it to the left, open up turn 4 and carry a little bit more speed through. Slight twitch from the rear. Gained a little bit of ground on the guy in front. You can see my lines are just a little bit more smoother. I'm actually able to hook up the apexes and carry a little bit more speed through the corner than he is. And if I didn't have that damage on the rear, obviously it would be much closer in the straight lines as well. And again, kind of misjudging his speed going into the hairpin there. Coming through the Schumacher S's. Just going to sit right behind him. He's up all over the curbs though, which is far from ideal. I'm having to kind of semi-breathe on the throttle, but he recognises that I'm quicker and lets me go on through. It takes to take that position. So now I'm hoping that I haven't got too much damage, that he's going to come back at me here coming into the chicane. See, he's starting to close up now. Obviously he's got the slipstream as well. Getting a good run there through the chicane, which is good. Hopefully we can get a good run coming through the final turn here. And a good drive off the corner. Right, so now we need to focus and get our heads down. Up in the P4, we've got some clear air in front of us. Things aren't going to be ideal. And some of you may recognise that there may be a grandstand or two missing around in this area. I have had to turn my graphic settings down because, as you can see from the FPS counter up in the top right, my FPS isn't too great when looking in certain directions in certain parts of the tracks. It's down the main straight in particular, it's dropping down into the 40s and 50s when it should be up in the 60s and 70s, which is a little bit frustrating, but obviously to try and help keep the the picture and the gameplay as smooth as possible, I've had to sacrifice on some of the graphic settings, so the crowds have gone, and turned down the grandstands as well. It's removed 1 or 2 of them from the circuit. So looking to the guys in front, P1 is well up the road. He's very much checked out from everyone else. He's about 18 seconds ahead of us. P2 is only 7 seconds up the road, which is quite good. And then P3 is about 6 seconds. So those are the 2 gaps that we need to keep an eye on. It's P2 and P3. There we can see him visually up ahead. Just gone out over behind the crest. That's there on the left hand side for the chicane, and I've gone straight over that, having missed my braking point. I thought I'd just actually go over the chicane on the inside there to avoid any potential damage of the car by bouncing over the curbs. But you can see I'm able to give up this time on the time penalty relatively easily, partly because of the damage, partly also because short shifting and being slower. So yeah, that hasn't helped the gap to the guys in front, but funnily enough, the gap is still around 7 seconds to P2. As P2 and P3 have been battling away for position. They have actually swapped positions, going through the complex of 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn 5 was on that back straight, or not back straight, but on the straight back there. It's the tiniest of right-handed kinks. That was 6 and 7 that we've just been through. And then the hairpin at the bottom of the hill here is turn 8. But yeah, P2 and P3 locked in a battle, which is good, is allowing us to kind of keep pace and close up with them a little bit more. Some of you have been relatively eagle-eyed and been keeping on the relative in that bottom right. You may have seen that Sam Hardman, who's there behind us in P5, has kind of been chasing us through the field. He started behind us and has been working our way, or working his way in a similar fashion to us. So it'll be interesting to see what pace he's got over the next couple of laps, to see whether he is a quick driver and someone that we can potentially use and latch onto to try and help close up to the guys in front, or if I am able to do it myself despite the additional drag that's coming off the rear of the car from the damage that I suffered in turn 2 on lap 1. So just looking at the gap, it's about 6.6.5 seconds or so to P2 now. Feel fairly confident on the brakes and through the corners. As I said, the car feeling pretty good. It doesn't feel like the damage is taking a load of downforce off the rear. Doesn't feel any worse or any more loose than it did previously. It's just a bit sluggish on the straights, and Sam Hardman's managed to take about half a second out of us with relative ease in the last third or half a lap or so. Reasonable run there through the hairpin. Wasn't the greatest, but certainly wasn't the worst. Obviously, up on our previous fastest lap delta, you can see that in the top left-hand corner of the Motec display behind the steering wheel. It's oh my god! No way! Oh no! Wow. Okay, this is super embarrassing. This is something that I've only just realised here in commentary and haven't picked up on at all during the race or at any point in the race. This would explain why I'm so slow, or so much slower than I should be. It's because I got the car in fuel mix 1. The car starts off in fuel mix 8. Fuel mix 8 is its fastest setting, where you're using the most fuel. You use fuel mix 1 for like ultra fuel saving and stuff like that, so of course it's going to be down on power. God damn it. Oh my god, I can't believe I've done that. I change it at the start of every race for the mini formation lap or the formation lap. I always put it down in fuel mix 1 just to save that tiny little bit. And usually when the engineer turns around and says, alright, going green, or get ready, going green, I go and bump it back up to fuel mix 8, but I haven't done it here in this race. God damn it. Man, I'm such a tool. I cannot believe I have done that. And it's taken me this long to realise. And I've only realised here in post-race, doing the commentary, doing the edit here for this video. And all along I thought it was the drag that was coming from the damage that I picked up in that bloody incident in turn 2. But nope. It's fuel mix 1. Oh man, that's embarrassing. And now, as you can see, yeah, Sam Hardman is right there at the rear of my car. Now feeling like an absolute sitting duck. Down on the wrong fuel setting, down on power, which means, yeah, I'm going to be slow as hell coming down this start-finish straight here. As you can see, he's got the slipstream, using the correct fuel mix setting, and he's got the move down the inside. Now obviously I didn't really put up too much of a fight there because I did want to let him go through. I was thinking obviously with the damage I can use his slipstream, I can hang on to the back of him, it will allow me to close up onto P2 and P3 up ahead, providing that I can stick with him, of course. So yeah, a little bit of tactical thinking there, but what could have been if I was on the right fuel mixture, eh? Never mind. Either way, the race goes on, and yeah, as you can see, fairly comfortable hanging on to the back of Sam, going through corners. And providing I can stay within 1.2 seconds, should get the slipstream on him, as that is where the cut-off point effectively is for the HPD, as he's very wide going into the entry for the Schumacher S's. Just brought me up alongside him, which isn't ideal. Coming into the corner, I've got the inside line and he lets me go on through, but don't want to be squabbling for position too much here, as this is going to slow us down and kind of impede our progress in catching P2 and P3, but he should have the run and the legs on me coming into the chicane, so a slight lift from myself as the LMP1 car is looking down the inside of me, which is really annoying. So having to climb up over the curb just to make sure that I avoid any contact there. Obviously I can see what he was trying to do. He was trying to put a car between himself and P2 in the LMP1 class, but it came from such a long way back. And it was a good thing that I saw him coming, because otherwise I could have quite easily just turned in on him there and given him a whole load of damage, and he would have lost the position. So it's quite a risky move by him. And obviously that's gone and knocked us well off the back of Sam. As you can see, he's now a second and a half up the road, so we've now actually gone and lost the slipstream as well in that pretty desperate dive from the LMP1 leader. So not overly best pleased with that, but at least I can see Sam. At least he's not too far away, and if I can hook up the corners here, should be able to stay with him as I just go and rip a tear off the visor there, help clear the screen once again, so I can see a lot better. But yeah, I am now kicking myself, having realised that I'm down in fuel mix 1, because half of what I've been talking here is a load of tosh. It's a load of crap. Probably didn't have all that much drag from the damage, and would be quite a bit quicker as well. Well, on the straights, and then obviously lap times would reflect that as well. They'd be a lot nicer, and looks like P3 had a little bit of trouble getting involved with the LMP1 cars up ahead. as they were making their way past. So yeah, losing ground, losing time to Sam up in front, but he's closing up on P3 quite nicely now. So hopefully, when they start battling, start closing the gap a little bit more to the two of them, and bring me back into play once again. See, trying to open up turn 4 a little bit better, running out a little bit wide there. That's probably as close to the limit as I could have got without getting a 1x off track penalty. No, not really penalties, because it doesn't really do anything to you in terms of the race and your overall position. It's more just affecting your safety rating. Sam's much closer to the back of P3, which is good. Hopefully we can capitalise on this, because despite being in fuel mix 1, we're keeping pace with P2 and P3. Maybe they're running on fuel mix 1 as well. Leader, I know, is definitely not. He's very much checked out. Leader of the HBD class, that is. Obviously, the overall leader of the race is in a very different class altogether, as almost lose the rear of the car there, coming off the exit of the chicane. Guy behind giving me a flash of the lights, but he is way too far back to be doing anything there. And we've got this nice straight here for him to sail on past with zero risk and zero effort on his part. And Sam and P3 are now battling. They're going side by side through turn 2 there, and now coming into turn 3 as well. Looks like Sam has managed to get ahead and take the position, but that's quite good for us when they're taking suboptimal lines. And we got a pretty good run there through the complex of turns 1, 2, 3, 4, and the almost non-existent turn 5. Got another LMP1 car coming up behind, and actually one of the LMP1 cars has got Sam out wide a little bit in the hairpin. Which is good. Going to hold them up a little bit more. Just need to indicate clearly to the LMP1 car behind us to where we are going to stay coming off the exit of the corner, which allows him to go past with as little risk as possible. It's kind of tricky in those kind of situations. There's the guy who was previously in P3, as you see, just spun off to the left-hand side, so we're now up into P4, which is good. Nice little freebie there. We've got another LMP1 car coming up behind us. Flash of the lights from him, but he's not going to be close enough to make the move, or get past, shall I say, coming into that chicane, so he's going to have to sit and wait for the moment. He was probably just flashing the lights, trying to alert me to his presence, even though the blue and yellow striped flag comes up on the left-hand side of the screen anyway to indicate that there's a faster class car or a car coming up behind you. That's going to put you a lap down when it gets to... It comes up when it's about a second and a half behind. And the blue and yellow flag, for those who don't actually know, is basically indicating that there is a guy coming up behind you to lap you, but you are not obliged to move out the way. It's just kind of more advised. It's not enforced like the typical blue flag is that you find in F1. And things are going to get a little bit interesting now, because we've got the LMP1 field trickling its way through. And now also coming up to the back of the GTE cars as well. So there goes one of the Audi R18s. He read that fairly well. It's quite difficult to actually judge coming off of the hairpin, and that Porsche GTE I think may have just got the tiniest of little taps from that LMP1 car coming through, which sent him out a little bit wide. And it would have passed him on the straight normally, but because he went out wide there and lost quite a bit of speed and momentum, it meant that I actually ended up passing him coming off the corner, so kind of had to hesitate getting on the throttle there so I didn't run out wide and into him. But yeah, I'm hoping I can use this stage of working through the traffic to help close up onto up towards Sam and Matthew in P3 and P2 respectively. So I do feel can be quite handy at times working my way through the traffic.
Thank you, man.
But of course, it just on a track like this where there's corner after corner, and they quite quickly lead into one another, it all very much depends on where you catch them on the lap and in the turns. So there is a slight element of luck, but there is also a factor of you approaching and coming up behind them in a certain manner that allows you to catch them in certain parts of the track. See, like here, coming through the Schumacher S's, should gain a little bit of time on the GTE as they're getting up to higher speeds. I'd be much closer than this if I was on Fuel Mix 8, but coming here into these two corners is exactly where I do not want to be catching a GTE car, because these HPDs and the LMP1 cars can take so much more apex speed with the downforce than the GTE cars can. And as you can see, about half a second off the previous fastest lap time. Coming into the chicanes is not so bad. Apex speeds are pretty similar there in the slow corners. It's the more medium and high speed turns where you get the greater differences between the GTEs and the higher downforce cars. So this guy's got a little bit of damage. You get a little bit of slipstream from him, which will allow us to slip on past. It looks like we've gained a bit of time on both Sam and Matthew up ahead, who are now relatively close to one another, which is good. They get locked into battle, obviously. Potential opportunity for us to try and close that gap a little bit more. So I really want to be nailing these sequence of corners. Really good run coming off of 4 there. That is turn 5, just that tiniest little kink there in the white line on the right hand side. It's pretty much non-existent. But according to the track maps online and stuff, counts as a turn 5 there.
Come on, do try, man.
But yeah, we're up on our previous fastest lap at the moment, or at least we were halfway through the hairpin. Coming off the hairpin, we've gone and lost a bit of time. Obviously, as the fuel load is bleeding off, we're gaining a little bit more. The car's a little bit lighter. It comes off of the corners a little bit better, but not as well as it would if it was in Fuel Mix 8. Yeah, I'm still very much frustrated with myself there. And just quickly made a slight adjustment in the black box on the right hand side to the fuel load. I was actually in communication with a couple of guys on the team, and I asked one of them to do a quick fuel calculation for me as to how much fuel I'd need to take in the pit stop to see myself to the end of the race. I do believe he said it's about 16 and a half kilograms is what this car uses, oddly. So I chucked in 18 there, which should give me 1 extra lap just in case I do need it. The amount of time that will be lost in the pit stop taking on that extra lap of fuel is pretty minimal. It's a few tenths to half a second if at best, so I'd rather be safe than sorry. Not that it really matter anyway when I'm in a fuel saving fuel mix. And yes, I am going to keep pointing that out and kind of rubbing salt into my own wounds about that. I cannot believe that I did not pick up on that at any point during the race. when doing this, and it's only now and when I'm doing the commentary for this video that I've actually realised. Oh god. I'm probably going to end up getting absolutely rinsed in the comment section for that, but ooh, Sam and Matthew have had a slight trade of positions there with a slight altercation with a GTE. Saw that one of them forced it out a little bit wide, and that's brought us right up to towards the back of Matthew now, which is good. It's within a second to him, so we'll get a little bit of slipstream coming off of this corner, and then also down the start-finish straight, especially if I can hold it pretty good through this final turn, and aided slightly by him running out a little bit wide, so half a second off the back of him. But of course, him in the correct fuel mixture is going to start pulling away here on the straight. But yeah, that's unleashed Sam up into P2 now. He's got some clear air up in front of him. Good 17 odd seconds or so before we come across the next GTE car. So he can start cracking in the pace that he can run at. And now it's my turn to see if I can get myself up onto the final step of the podium. And it certainly seems like we've got the confidence in the corners that Matthew doesn't have, and coming off of the drive here, coming out through the exit of turn 7, we're on his right hand side, but of course didn't have the legs coming down the straight. It's giving me the room once again. Become very, very close to one another coming off the exit of the hairpin, but he's conceded a position and slipped in behind us, so we're now up into P3. But of course, going to be a sitting duck on the back straight unless I can get a very good run coming through these two turns here. He can out a bit of a gap, and we get a pretty decent drive coming off the corner. We've got an LMP1 car coming up behind us. It's going to go to our left. We'll pick up the slipstream from him, just the tiniest bit before the braking zone. So I'm going to hold on to the position from now, which is good, but need a good run coming off of the chicane and then out through the exit of the final turn here to try and hold on to the position. And then Matthew didn't have the tidiest of runs there, and has fallen over to half a second off the back of me, which is good, giving me more breathing room coming into turn 1 here and not really having to defend. He's closed up a little bit under the braking, but yeah, not close enough to make the move, and I was kind of sat watching the rear view mirror as well, just making sure that I didn't need to try and defend the position, even though you're not really meant to move in the braking zone. I say not meant to, you aren't meant to move in the braking zone. It is a very, very dangerous thing. So yeah, P3 at the moment. Pretty happy with that, all things considered. 13.5 kilograms of fuel remaining, so we've got a way to go before we need to make our stop yet, as we're using 1.77 kilograms of fuel per lap. So some good fuel saving going on. Running out a little bit wide there coming out the exit of 12. Picked up another 1x. So I've got another 10 safety rating points kind of spare before I hit the limit that you can go to in these races, and when you do reach that limit of 17 safety rating points, you do get disqualified from the race. But even still, getting 7 safety rating points in one race at the 8 level safety rating that I'm at, and quite high up, is going to knock me down a peg or two. And there is another 1x for running out a little bit wide. Of course, 4 of those aren't really my fault from getting hit in the rear, as iRating doesn't have a blame system, but then again I don't really blame him because they are extremely difficult to program and, well, program reliably. It's racing is very much one of those. Every kind of situation is different, has its own little quirks and ways of things unfolding, and the best way to steward that or combat against it is by having human stewards, but that's not a feasible option when it comes to public racing. So many races going on per hour, so many drivers. You can't really have a human steward doing the work, and having AI or the program having code trying to determine things. It's very, very easy for it to get it wrong. Sure, you can program certain scenarios, but there's always slight differences that easily switch the blame to the other driver for those common scenarios. So to avoid any massive frustrations of being wrongly accused of incidents and things like that, it's better to blame or penalise both drivers rather than one, as Matthew is looking to my inside here. Going to go for the switchback on him, seeing as I didn't really have a counter, so I'm going to try and hang it all the way around here on the outside of turn 2, which we managed to do. I think he may have had slight loss of traction at the rear of his car, which allowed me to accelerate off the corner so much better than he did. Or maybe perhaps he was kind of waiting until he knew it was safe to accelerate, but either way, that's allowed me to retain the position. But yeah, blame systems really, really tough to do accurately, and it's better to just blame both drivers than wrongly accuse one driver when it was quite blatantly the other. So that's what iRacing have done. That's what we did in Project Cars 2 as well. I think that's what quite a few other racing games do, just to save an awful lot of hassle and to be more resourceful. So we've got a couple of GTE cars up in front. Don't think we're going to be able to get this M8 before the chicane, so we're going to have to settle in behind until he does. He goes a little bit deep there, which allows us to kind of switch back underneath, coming off the exit of the corner. And that's gone and actually helped me a little bit, as Matthew got caught up behind the M8 as he turned into the final turn. So it's giving me a bit of breathing room. It's hurt his momentum coming off the turn. So now we've got a Porsche to try and clear relatively soon as well if we can. Hopefully we can catch him between turns 4 and 6. So this is the exit of 4 now. Through 5, coming down towards turn 6, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be close enough, so I'm going to have to sit in behind, which is not good because these are two corners where the HBD is quite a bit quicker than the GTE car. And as you can see, Matthew's gone close back up onto the rear of myself. Get the move done before the turning point for the hairpin, and that Porsche is making it very, very tight, and Matthew wasn't able to sneak through there. So again, got a little bit more breathing room, and again Matthew hasn't passed before getting to the Schumacher S's, so that's worked very, very nicely in my favour and completely against him, and it's given me quite a bit more breathing room to actually play with. It seems that Sam in P2 has disappeared from a relative. You can see, or just quickly saw, that the leader was 33 seconds up ahead of me. So he's very much running away from this, but yeah, at this point I was kind of half wondering if Sam had actually disconnected or if he had gone into the pit lane. So I hadn't seen it or picked it up beforehand. And it was on the previous lap, or that previous lap that we just completed there, that the change of position happened, because I've just gone from P2 to P3 on the relative board, relative standings. So the positions on that change and update when you go across the start finish line. It doesn't do it live. So we've got P1 in the LMP1 class closing up onto the back of us. So we're going to hang over to the left-hand side of the circuit here to allow him to pass on the right. And we'll tuck him behind. Struggled to get the car turned in there, hooking it in towards the apex. Obviously, I haven't been into the pits yet, so I haven't changed tyres, and even when we do go into the pit lane I won't be changing tyres either. So the race is only an hour long, and the tyres can quite easily do the full race distance, although obviously you do see some performance fade over the course of the stint. Especially through corners like that, where you've got quite a bit of steering lock on and you're trying to get hard on the accelerator coming off the turn. Just trying to keep that speed and momentum up. So we've got another LMP1 car coming up behind us, but we have to wait until the start finish straight, and indeed he does. One of the GTE cars is going into the pit lane, which is good. It means one less car to actually pass on track. It means one less car that could potentially lose time trying to pass as well. Getting an alright run there through the first sequence of corners. Trying to open up turn 7 there, not getting the car tucked into the apex though. Using all the available curbing on the outside. LMP1 car coming up behind. Goes slightly defensive here into the hairpin to make sure that he doesn't try and lunge past. Hang to the left hand side to allow him to pass on the right. Just as we're coming into the Schumacher S, is lifting out there to avoid going into the back of him as he was coming across my nose. And now we've got P2 in the GTE class, just clipping the grass on the outside there. Fortunately, didn't have too much steering lock on, otherwise that could have been the car potentially going round. Just about managing to sneak through there. Going through the right-handed kink on that back straight as well. But yeah, we got about another lap or two worth of fuel in the tank. So we'll keep on circulating around from now. Matthews just dived off into the pit lane. Saw that just for a very brief moment on a relative board before it oddly disappeared. Or he disappeared, shall I say. Tend to take a slightly different line in the high downforce cars of this HPD here in iRacing than I did in Project Cars 2 with the LMP1 car. What I was doing in the LMP1 and what I usually do is go in for an early apex, run a little bit deep in the mid corner and then bring it back for a tighter exit, or line it back up, shall I say, for a better exit and better, harder drive off the corner. But here in iRacing and with this HPD, I tend to not take that early apex. Just take a wider sweeping line going into and through the corner. We've got 1.2 estimated laps of fuel, so we'll go on round once more for one more lap. But yeah, just take that wider sweeping line. It just, for some reason, it just feels better than taking the double apex. And there is actually the leader of the HPD class. So he is an entire pit stop and a second or two ahead of myself, which is a little bit frustrating, but at the same time slightly kind of encouraging. I've got a target there in front of me to try and stick with here on this lap if I possibly can, and then see how close we come out to Sam after the pit stops, as Jamie, the HPD driver up in front, is not wanting to let that LMP1 car go through easily. The LMP1 car taking a couple of looks going into those corners, but the HPD sticking to its line, which is the right thing to do. It's what you're meant to do as a slower class car, and the faster class cars are meant to find their way around you. It's just some of the LMP1 drivers can be a bit overzealous and a little bit dangerous and take risky moves by sticking their nose in when you're kind of taking a more sweeping and open flowing line. They should be sticking behind you and way into after the corner for the straight, where they can easily pass on the hybrid power, but I know sometimes they can be quite impatient and yeah, make those risky moves. And frustratingly, this LMP1 car taken to the pit lane right here in front of us, which is not good. I do not want to be following a car coming into the pit lane. As getting there on the brakes for the pit limiter line. Fortunately, there was enough space between me and the LMP1 car. They didn't really affect me going into the pit lane, and now the car's actually chugging a little bit coming down the pit lane. Got that little amount of fuel. Stopping in our pit stall. Now you can see 35 seconds worth of optional repairs. That is what I thought the damage was that we had on the car. So refuel back up to 18 litres, or 18 kilograms. Sorry. Sam has already gone through. You can see him at the top of the relative there. Hopefully we can get out in front of Matthew, and it looks like we're going to do so quite comfortably. And that is going to be us back out on track in P3. I was kind of somewhat hoping that Sam had disconnected from the session, because obviously that would have gifted me P2, but alas, that was not the case. He just pitted a few laps earlier than everyone else. Obviously using the correct fuel mixture, he would have ended up pitting when he was meant to pit, whereas myself, using fuel mix 1, was able to go a little bit longer and a little bit deeper into the race. So a gap about 11 seconds to P2 up in front. It's going to be a difficult task to close that up with the little time that is remaining here in this race. Just over 10 minutes or so, between 10 and 15 minutes roughly. But we've got a decent gap to P4 behind, so providing that we don't have any silly mistakes or any big errors, we should hold on to this final podium position relatively comfortably. Got an LMP1 car coming up behind us. He looks like he's just going to settle in behind and wait until after the chicane, or well, it's going to be after the final turn now. After he messed up the chicane, that, which is quite good. So don't really need him to be making any stupid, silly moves into the final corner, which is something that they used to do, the LMP1 drivers, quite a bit last time I raced here on iRacing. As from what I've seen so far here in this race, the driving standards of the LMP1 cars has been better. They used to be really aggressive through traffic and make crazy lunges down the inside going into corners, which very much put the other driver that they were lunging on in a very difficult position, because they would have to watch their mirrors so much and obviously give up the track space for the LMP1 car if they wanted to avoid making contact. And then, yeah, things get kind of heated between the drivers in the various classes, but either those kind of drivers don't really race the LMP1 cars anymore, or I've just kind of been lucky with the drivers in the races that I've had with them, where they've just been a little bit more calm, a little bit more collected, and they kind of, yeah, a little bit more patient, and will wait for a much better opportunity to make the pass. Just seemed a little bit more experienced, a little bit more level-headed. Just nice. It makes the race a little bit less stressful for the rest of the drivers who aren't in the LMP1 cars. Not saying that those kind of things don't happen anymore, because they do. The driving standards can be quite iffy at times here in iRacing, despite the pedestal that people like to put it up on. And yeah, for the most part it is better than public lobby racing, but sometimes it's just as bad, if not as worse, or worse than public lobby racing, especially when you consider into the fact that you kind of do need to practice here for these races in iRacing. Especially if you don't spend a huge amount of time, or you are new to it. Obviously once you kind of get settled in and have been playing it for quite a while, you can kind of hop between cars a little bit more freely, but if you're playing other games as well, it's always good to just hop into a test session beforehand, to spend half an hour to an hour or so just familiarising yourself, making any tweaks to the setup if necessary, and then yeah, when you go and find that there's some idiots in your lobby and end up getting involved in a crash in the early part of a 1 hour race, obviously it's a very frustrating experience. Even more so than yeah, general public lobby can be. So obviously there's less, you're not as invested in the public lobbies. You kind of, yeah, the races are somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes usually, so you can quite easily, if a race goes bad, just end up quitting out and going for another one, unless it's a ranked one, and obviously it'll then impact your ranking. But you can quite quickly hop between and get into races and do multiple races in a quick 1, 2, 3 hour session, whereas here in iRacing, where the races tend to be 45 minutes to an hour or so, or maybe even a little bit longer, sometimes they're an hour and 20 or an hour and a half, you don't necessarily always have the opportunity to get into another race to make up for a bad one. So yeah, while sometimes the racing here in iRacing can be absolutely fantastic, it could be very, very similar to league racing kind of conditions, there are times where you do get accidents, pretty big accidents, and some people kind of do it for the meme as well. But either way, we are soldiering on with this race here. No sign of P2 up in front of us on the relative board. We've got a GTE leader in front and a couple of LMP1 cars as well. But yeah, the third furthest away car from me is P7 in the LMP1 class, and he's 14.5 seconds up the road, so P2 is going to be beyond him. And there you go, he's actually literally just popped up on the relative board. You can see him, Sad Hardman at the top. So he's about 12.5, 13 seconds up the road from me, so I'll be losing time to him. But kind of holding ground to P4 behind, which is good. It's what I wanted. Well, kind of what I wanted. What I want to be now, in hindsight, is in Fuel Mix 8 and up in P2 and much, much closer to the race leader, because that's probably where I would have ended up being if I was in the correct fuel mixture from the start. But yeah, Yorkie had to Yorkie, shall we say. And that's not me saying that I do it often, because I don't. I can only recall one other time where I've had a similar situation, which was in one of the iRacing Le Mans 24 hours. Exactly the same thing. Pop the fuel mixture down to 1 for the formation lap. I was starting the 24 hours, and it was actually at the end. Or well, yeah, the end of the first part of the Mulsanne straight. So going into the first Mulsanne chicane, I realised that the fuel mixture was on fuel mix 1 still. And the guys who I was in the team with had a bit of a laugh about that, but very quickly obviously cranked it back up, put it back on fuel mix 8, and we were good to go from there. But that is the only ever time that I've ever made that kind of mistake before. So yeah, it's not really a Yorkie-ism, as it were, just a stupid funny moment. It shouldn't have happened. And that is actually a really, really nice and quite iconic livery there on that Audi R18. Doesn't originate from that car, but let us know in the comment section below. Have your guess as to what livery it is, and yeah, I'll give you a thumbs up or a one of those like heart comment things if you do get it right. I will love your comment for you, shall we say. So 8.7 litres, kilograms, sorry, of fuel remaining. Haven't got too much longer to go. I believe it was 34 odd laps that the HPDs were generally tending to do if they were on pretty good pace. Otherwise, it'd be about 33 laps for the rest of the field. It all depends on how many times the LMP1 leader ends up lapping them. And obviously, with me being on the wrong fuel mixture, I'm underpaced. And I'm pretty sure he has lapped me 2 times. So I think I'll only end up doing 33 laps here in this race, although I could be wrong. I mean, we're about to start lap 32, so it could go on to 34. So that GT car was well up all over those curbs. To be fair, I was kind of bouncing up all over them as well. And yeah, the leader going through past another one of the Ferraris. Hopefully we can get him coming into turn 1. It's a bit of a lunge from here, but we've got pretty good brakes. And we do indeed manage to slip on through. So now it's about timing it right with the lead GTE here. She's got the Omen team livery on it. It's out very wide there. And yeah, as you can see, I picked up an off-track Monex. No doubt he would have. So now coming off the drive off of turn 7, pass him, come into the hairpin there. Sam's managed to get the gap to over 16.5 seconds to us now. Just had a very quick look at the relative, or change the black box, shall I say, to have a look to see how much time is remaining in the race. And there is just under 2.5 minutes. So we should go on to lap 34. But I got the fuel for it. Car sliding around a little bit there, going into the chicane. The rear end was starting to break away from me slightly. So turn the car in. Managed to keep it together though and pointing in the right direction. Down and through the first corner now into turn 2. Into the tricky turn 3, much slower, hanging to the left hand side to open up turn 4. So carry a little bit more speed to get harder on the acceleration through and out the corner. Now into turn 6, down into third gear again. Open up the following corner by hanging to the left on the exit. As there's obviously straight coming down here, down towards turn 8. It's just the hairpin here at the bottom of the hill. Taking a wider entry in, hooking up a later apex. Try and carry the speed and the downforce through the corner. And then accelerate off the turn. Quite shy from the apex there, going through the left-hander. Kind of want to be much closer to the inside curb. Okay-ish run there through turn 12, the right-hander. Obviously a key corner to get right. Get a good run coming out through the exit onto the back straight here. Then down into the chicane. Trying not to trouble those larger curves on the inside too much. Now into the final turn. Second gear, using the curve that's out there on the outside, just nice and flat. Now got 1 lap remaining, hence the white flag up in the top left hand corner. As in America, that is what they use to indicate that is the final lap of the race. It's by waving a white flag. In other countries and series, the white flag is generally reserved for slow car on track. But America use a slightly different flag system. We'll go and pick up another 1x there. Just kind of taking liberties with the track limits slightly. Not the tidiest of runs through 6 and 7, but we kept it on the track, which is the main thing. Into the completely flat out Schumacher S's. Just gently riding the curbs, going through that. Better run that time through the left-hander. It's okay through the right. Easiest corner on the circuit. Well, second easiest, shall I say. The easiest is turn 5. Which doesn't exist. Skipping our way through the chicane. And then into the final corner for the last time in this race. And coming across the start-finish line to pick up P3. Was fairly happy with the result. Getting up onto the podium, starting from P7. Obviously gaining a good 4 positions. But yeah, now that I've done the commentary here in hindsight, the video editing, and realised that I'm in Fuel Mix 1, things could have been a lot better. Probably could have had second and would have been much closer to the race leader. So there you can see the damage at the rear of the car. The very back of it all bent and mangled up. The rear end, the end plate on the end of the rear wing is pretty badly bent, and so is the rear wheel arch. And then with the results as well, we get told how much iRating we gained or lost, and ended up losing a single iRating, -1 from that race. So now down to 3,846 iRating. So hopefully in the next iRacing video, in the next round, we can increase that a little bit more and get ourselves closer to 4K. But yeah, a few things learnt from this race. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. If you think I'm a total idiot for leaving it in fuel mix 1, give the video a thumbs up. And yeah, if you want to see more content on the channel in the future and don't want to miss out on that, go ahead and subscribe with the bell notification. You'll be alerted to any new videos going up on the channel. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully I shall catch you in the next one. But in the meantime, have fun, stay safe, and take care.